This is CJ Carr, and you're listening to the Ministry of Wrestling. And I'm telling you now, you better be subscribing and following and listening to every single goddamn show, or I will come and find you and hunt you down.
Yo, hey, it's me, the one AJ, joined by the one and only Big Tone. We got the t-shirts on, so you know what that means. We're here now, guys. We've released a video sometime last year talking about how the Ministry done their first Indy show. Now, that was one of the biggest moments, so big that we even had to do a reaction video to it. I'm going to let Big Tone touch on it a bit, but one of the biggest moments, Big Tone sadly wasn't there for a moment where Double V, Leon, and myself were able to be on an entrance ramp to a wrestling ring, and we touched the ring and felt so blessed to be able to do that. The gentleman who founded what we're going to be talking about a bit later on gave us this opportunity here. There we go. That is the Ministry of Wrestling in a wrestling ring. I listen, there's a 15-year-old, why am I lying? There's a 4-year-old version of me that is smiling ear to ear from the days of watching Hulk Hogan slamming Earthquake to seeing that me in a ring is unbelievable. So it's going to be an honor for me to introduce this gentleman shortly. But Big Tone, before we do talk about the Ignite, before we do introduce him, would you like to highlight a little bit of your Ignite experience?
Oh, well, yeah. Big Tone is always in the zone. Yeah, happy to be here. I'm happy for this interview we're about to have because, again, Ignite was my very first independent show. And that photo you just showed, that was my very first time in a wrestling ring. And both of them were special experiences. And I'm grateful for them. But going behind the scenes and reading the story of the promoter, seeing what he's done, I was shocked, man. There's just so much you don't know about the projects that you love. Yeah. And every chance you get, to learn more and get more in depth into it is something worth doing. So happy for today.
That's the one. Okay, let's not waste any time. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, couldn't help it. Let's introduce a superstar wrestler and the founder of Ignite Wrestling Pro, Mr. CJ Carter. How are we doing, sir?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great. It's nice to be on, talk to you both, and it's just so nice to hear the kind words from you both about our show that you came to in November. For me, right, what I love most about putting on shows is moments like that, moments for people to come down, whether that's lifelong wrestling fans or whether that's the younger children, going from one age to the other, all the way across the spectrum. And it's even people who've never seen a wrestling show before, they come and they just get I love seeing the experience that they get, and I love that I was able to give that to you guys, that just makes me feel good, and it makes me feel I'm doing the right thing and doing these shows, basically. So
100%. It's such an experience. I'm going to touch onto it a bit later on, but what I would like to do before we get into the Ignite part is get into the birth of CJ Carter, the wrestler who's toured the British circuit and beyond. How did you get into the business of wrestling? If I remember rightly, age 14. So that's mad.
Wow.
To even picture.
How do you know that?
I was cheering the NWO, and there you are. Kicking off in the ring.
I was 14 when I first started training. Did I tell you? I don't think I even said that. I sent you over a bio, and I didn't put that in the bio, so I don't know.
You do our research.
I've been doing my research. I'll tell you what. From the bio you said, I was so intrigued. Do you know what? I'm not gonna lie. We aren't a podcast that exclude others. I did have a little peek at your interview with Wrestling Should Be Fun, which is an awesome interview, which I encourage everyone to check out as well. Great podcast, actually. From the UK side, so I did hear that there, and I think I've read it or somewhere else. But
I've done a few podcasts, and I guess Wrestling Should Be Fun's one of them. To shout out to them, great guys. I was 14. I've always been a wrestling fan. I think like you two, it sounds like I was about 4 or 5 years old. My youngest memories is sitting on the sofa watching wrestling. So I guess around sort of 91, 92, I really started to get into it. And I was always just desperate to be a wrestler. That's for as long as I can remember. It's all I ever wanted to do and all I ever wanted to be. So as soon as I got into like my early teens, I started like researching like how do you get into professional wrestling, and it kind of became evident you had to find a wrestling school. And you know, when I was like 12, 13, it's not like it is now. You know, probably across the country now, there's anywhere between like, I don't know, 30, 40, maybe even more wrestling schools in this country. Quite you know, quite a lot of wrestling promotions just have their own school now. There's a lot very local to me. So Square One is a really good one that's just kind of up the A1 from where we are. And they're quite accessible now, but they weren't then. They just weren't accessible at all. There was maybe like 5 or something like that in the whole country. There was Hammerlock, which was like down in Kent, which was a bit of a trek. And then there was Dropkicks that was out in Essex, and you know, I didn't drive, and my parents didn't drive, so it was tricky. And then they FWA opened up a school in London. So I don't know if you ever watched FWA back in the day, but it was like,
yeah, the wrestling channel. I'm so grateful for that. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And so I was a big FWA fan, and that was kind of like the first British indie that really made waves on the scene and kind of like opened my eyes to the British indie scene. And they opened a school in London, and I started training there when I was about 14, and I kind of stayed there for a little while. They shut down, so I had to move over to Dropkicks, which was in Essex, which was a bit of a nightmare travel. I remember sort of like doing, you know, I was like 14 or 15 years old and doing like 2.5 hour treks on like 5 different trains or something to get out there, because it was like on a Sunday, so some of the lines weren't working, and I remember having to like get off at like Grays and then get a cab to Purfleet, and it was a nightmare. But yeah, that was my like early days of getting into training.
But it shows dedication, like, you know, it shows the true passion and heart you had. Would you say that experience, is that what led to your training under Greg Burridge and Paul Ashe?
Yeah, so that was a bit later on. So what happened was like, I mean, I've told the story a few times, but you know, I'll tell it again for you guys. I don't want to play the violin or anything like that, but it was, you know, I just had some bad luck early on in my training. So I think I was about 17 at the time, and I was just about to start maybe getting on shows. I was getting to that kind of level where I'd been training for sort of like 3 years or so. But obviously, being so young when I started, most places will want to wait until you're kind of 16 to get you on shows and stuff like that. So just as I was kind of getting to that age, I managed to like blow out my ACL in training. And like, so I completely tore my ACL and all of my meniscus cartilage in my knee. Yeah, had to end up having sort of like reconstructive surgery on my knee. And at the time, I mean, I'm sure they say this to everyone who has a bad injury, so this isn't like just me they would say this to, but all the doctors I saw and the surgeons, they were like, look, you're not going to wrestle again. There's just no chance. Your knee's never going to be strong enough to wrestle again. And so I was kind of like, oh god, I didn't even really get to achieve anything. Like my dream was just to have, at the time, was just to have one match, and I didn't even manage to get that, and I managed to get a pretty serious injury. I mean, Ethan, I don't know if you've heard of Ethan Allen. He's a wrestler on the British scene at the moment, and he'd done exactly the same thing right before the pandemic. He tore his ACL, and he's basically been out since. So we're talking like near on, he's been out about 4 years with the same injury that I had, because it's really hard. Like he's come back, I think he came back and did like 1 or 2 matches, and it went again, because when you have such a bad tear of your ACL, it's, you know, I guess the same for footballers, right? And for a lot of people in sports, it's one of the worst injuries you can get. And yeah, I really struggled to even sort of like jog or run for years. So it took me a long time to even build up strength properly in the leg to be able to do just basic stuff. And I kind of wrote off my dreams of wrestling quite young. But I got into my early 20s. I've been out for probably something like 4 years or something like that. And I was like, you know what? I've got to give this a go. And if I go back to training and my knee goes again, then fine. Okay, right. I'll never be a wrestler. But I've got to give it one more go, because it was just my dream since I was so young. So that's where I then ended up training again. And then I met like Paul Ashe and trained under him. and then went on to train under Greg Burridge at Lucha Britannia, which is where Will Ospreay's from, which is how I met Ospreay at Lucha Britannia. He kind of came in and started training there very similar time to myself. So I kind of met him like really early doors of his training before he
What
was.
age were you both then?
I would have been in my like sort of like mid-20s, and he would have been sort of like 18 or something like that. So yeah, that's about right, because I'm nearly 37 and he's what, like 30, 31 now. So
yeah, I think so. That's what I've heard in his latest promos. He's talking about like the New Japan career. He's like, I'm a 30-year-old, 31-year-old man.
yeah, I think
So,
he's
yeah,
31 now, and so yeah, there's like 6 years between us. So yeah, if I was what, like 24, 25, yeah, he would have been like 19. So, and he'd been backyarding for a long time, to be honest, but he just kind of like got into sort of like Lucha Britannia, and that's where he met Greg Burridge, who really honed his skills as well. And you know, Greg takes credit for, you know, making Will what he is today, and Will still gives Greg all that credit, and brought him out even at one of his matches recently when he was wrestling for 1PW. Brought Greg out because he's so kind of thankful to the training that he gave him. So we both trained under the same person. Sorry if that's a really long answer, but
nah, man, we love it. We love it. We want you to talk. We want the people to hear your voice.
The more in depth it is, the better for us. Like anyone who I want to be watching this, and I'm not dismissing anyone, are true wrestling fans, and I feel like you need to appreciate someone's journey. So as much as you want to give, we're in for it. That's the way of it today. Yeah,
so it was like a very stop-start early, early in my journey. But yeah, and then I eventually finally started kind of getting on shows and started doing shows regularly in like 2010, and kind of went on from there and trained at various different places and started picking up some experience. And it was kind of when I got to Lucha Britannia, which was where I really started to meet a lot of people from the scene. And you know, I kind of knew I met Tom Dawkins before I got to Lucha Britannia, and then he moved over as well. So Tom is Cara Noir, who was the Progress champion. So that's the kind of like era of people. There you go, right there, boom.
Yeah, I got a few images there, so I'll be like throwing them up as you mentioned.
I actually won my first ever championship from him when he was just Tom Dawkins. So
how did that feel?
Yeah, it was amazing. Do you know what? It was my friends came to watch it, and they still say it was their favorite match of mine, even though it was really early on. Like, it was really, I think it was 2011, so I was only like a year into doing shows. And I've definitely had better matches since. Throughout your career, you just get better. But that was the first time they'd ever seen me win a championship. It was also like quite nice. It was on Father's Day, and my dad came to watch me, and I didn't tell him I was winning the championship. So like, he was like super happy. So it was like a nice like Father's Day moment, father-son moment. All my friends were there. And you know, like, even though I was super early on in my career, and so was Tom was just so good then, that you couldn't have a bad match with him. So it wouldn't have been terrible. That's for sure. So.
That's awesome. That is awesome. But talking like having your dad there and then starting off at 14, it sounds like your parents were really supportive in the journey of wrestling as you taking that as a career. Was that the case? Were they like fully supportive? Because I know, it's hard enough in the States, but even on the British side, as you said, it was so small back then. Like, what was the initial reaction when you're like, I want to get in the ring?
My dad was always really supportive of me. So my dad kind of brought me up by himself pretty much. So, and he was a massive wrestling fan. He's the one who got me into wrestling. So, I used to sit down with him and watch wrestling when, I was like 5, 6, 7. We'd watch, like, when Raw started, we watched Raw together on a Friday night. And he was always really supportive. He always said to me, he was like, look, do whatever it is in your life that makes you happy and that you want to do. And whether or not I'm going to make a permanent career out of it or not, he just wanted me to, chase those dreams. So, and has always supported me in my promoting as well. He's come to every single one of the shows that I've put on myself. So all through the Clash years, all through the Ignite years. I mean, it helps that he lives in Bournemouth. So
it does, but but it's awesome to get that kind of support no matter which way. People always find an excuse. So yeah, that is awesome. That is awesome to get that kind of support. So when you first started off your career, was it as CJ Carter, or was there another persona then? Because I know you tagged up earlier.
Yeah, I've had a few. So my first ever persona was just Chris St. Clair, which was like the most like just like white meat, like smiley baby face ever, just like coming out like, yeah, go on. Like, and I just basically actually I was called Chris Awesome for one match because my first ever match, the promoter came up to me, was like, right, what's your name? And I was like, I don't know, I haven't got a name. He's like, well, you need to think of something. And I was like, I don't know, I have no idea. And then right before I went out for like my entrance, he was like, right, have you got a name? I was like, no. So like, right, you're going to be Chris Awesome then. So you're Chris Awesome for one match. And then that same promoter was like, right, you need a name. So they stole a name from an old British wrestler called Tony St. Clair. And they were like, right, you can just be Chris St. Clair. So for like the first like 2.5 years of my career, I was just Chris St. Clair. And that was the kind of like, it wasn't even a character. It was just like me smiling a lot and wrestling. And that's where I was when I won my first championship from Tom that I was just talking about. And then when I moved over to Lucha Britannia, I met Gene Money, and we like struck up like quite a good friendship. And he was doing a character called Johnny Lavelle, and we were training there, and they had a show on the Sunday, and the promoter said, oh, do you two want to tag up together on the show? We've got a spot for like a tag team match. Do you two want to go together? And I was like, yeah, like we were training together in the gym at the time because he was quite local as well to Bournemouth. He's not anymore. He's moved further up now. Well, he just kept going higher and higher. He went to Milton Keynes. Now he's in Sheffield. But yeah, he just kept getting. It must be me. He just kept getting further and further. But like at the time, we were training together in the gym pretty much every day, and we got on really well. And so I was like, yeah, I'll tag with him. And I didn't really have a character as such. Like I'd just come off doing the Chris St. Clair stuff, and so I was like, I need something different. And he was like, well, why don't you be my brother? Like I'm Johnny Lavelle. Why don't you be Christopher Lavelle? And I was like, oh, okay. So we're like, okay, so we had Christopher Lavelle and Jonathan Lavelle, and we were Lavelle brothers. So we were like this like kind of like posh Eton boys tag team, and we had like the cardigans wrapped around our necks, and we came out with like croquet mallets, and yeah, then we ran that tag team for a little while, and that was fun. Done some like fun little promos and had some fun matches, and we can't like I got a bit frustrated with that, which is kind of why that ended. And I kind of felt bad at the time because I kind of then stepped away for a little while I tried to work out what I wanted to do, and I kind of left Gene a little bit high and dry at the time. I felt quite bad because we'd invested a lot of time and money into this tag team. Like we bought matching gear, we had like different sets of gear. People were starting to be like, right, we'll try and bring you in for some shows. We had some dates lined up, but I was getting really frustrated because I didn't feel like we were getting the recognition we deserved. And maybe partly some of that was down to me not pushing hard enough, or there could have been loads of factors, but for whatever reason I was pretty bloody frustrated at the time. So I said to Gene, I was like, look, I need to step away for a little bit, work out what I want to do, because this isn't working for me. Like this, like I don't know. And so I kind of just left him high and dry. And actually looking back, it was like he kind of had every right to just never speak to me again. Because he lost all of his bookings that we had as a tag team because they wanted a tag team, not singles. He had to reinvent his entire character, come up with something new, start again from scratch. And he invented Gene Money, which has become one of the most successful characters on the scene. So it worked out for him. Yeah. And credit to him, he never stopped pestering me, right? Like he never stopped getting on my case, but come on, man, like when you coming back? He was like, and then he actually started co-promoting a place himself in Milton Keynes because he'd moved up there. And he was like, look, I'm kind of running this place. It's called Apex Pro Wrestling. He's like, come in and work with me. He was like, I know you got frustrated when we were doing the tag thing because you didn't feel like we were getting the chances that, we deserved, and the storylines that you wanted, and this kind of stuff, and the matches that you wanted. So, but come in and work for me. And he was like, you can trust me, and you know it will be great working with me. And I was like, you know what? Okay, fine. You know what? I'll come back, but I'm only working for you. And that was, and then I needed a character. So I was like, right. So I'd done boring Chris St. Clair, I'd done posh boy Christopher Lavelle. I wanted something that was a little bit more a little bit more me. And at the time, I was mega angry and frustrated from that run that we had as the tag team, and just kind of bitter about the wrestling scene, a bit like, oh, like screw everyone. So I kind of came up with this really dark, kind of evil character, which like that's where CJ Carter came from, and I
Pure
slipped
evil.
Yeah, pure evil, exactly. Yeah, kind of like there you go. that kind of darkness and like angriness and evilness and bitterness kind of came from the frustrations of not feeling like I got the chances I deserved earlier on in my career. And it ended up being the most successful thing I ever did. So, wanting to come back and only work for Paddy at Apex became working for dozens and dozens of promotions, working 2 or 3 times every weekend for about 5 years or so. So yeah, but
I mean, I must say, like when I seen like you as pure evil CJ Parker, I was like, who is this guy? Because obviously we only met you at Ignite as CJ did, and the transformation was like, wow, like you
Do you know
completely
what?
different.
I have to co-sign that because again, going through, I've been on a lot of your socials and that, and I'm going through certain stuff, and I'm hearing some of your promos of like the journey of CJ Carter and all these people coming in, and you're not going to have it, and I'm like, that's a complete different voice from this gentleman I met. 96. I was like, wow, he owns this character, man. I loved it.
Yeah, it was kind of like, I ended up with this like CJ Carter voice and persona. I don't know, it just kind of came out of me, and I don't know, I loved it. I loved being CJ Carter. I really did. It fit me more than anything I'd ever done. I was having so much fun doing it, and I was really starting to have some success with it as well. For the first time, I'd grafted away for like a good few years by that point, and it was really just starting to pay off, like around about 2019, something like that. Really started to pay off. Then the pandemic came, slowed it down a bit, came out of the pandemic, was flying, was doing even better post-pandemic than I was pre-pandemic. The character just clicked for me. Some people didn't like it. Some people felt like it was a bit too gimmicky, right? So there were times where I tried to kind of tone it down slightly for some promotions, but I always had the most fun doing it when I went all in on the character on it. So at UBW for one of the shows, I don't know if you found the clip or not, but you'll be able to hunt it out on my socials, or it might even be on UBW socials. They brought me out in a coffin, and it was so cool, man.
I saw that.
Yeah, they had like all these people dressed up as sort of like druids, and they carried the coffin out and they put it down, and I came out of the coffin, and it was just so cool doing stuff like that with that character, and I could do some really fun stuff. It was like kind of like it ended up being a sort of like mixture of like a little bit Undertaker, a little bit original Mankind. Do you know what I mean? Like a bit Bray Wyatt. Like it was just fun, you know.
Did you find like the transition to being a dastardly heel much more better than play the babyface?
Oh, 100%. And being a heel is so much more fun. There are some people that prefer being face, but they're few and far between, if I'm honest. Being a heel was so much more fun. You know, making people hate you and pissing people off is just so much fun. And it's easier, if I'm honest. Like, you know, making people like you, being a likable person is not as easy as it seems. You've got to be charismatic. You probably got to be funny a little bit as well, and you've got to be entertaining in the ring. And some people can be the best wrestlers in the world, but they can just be a little bit bland, and some people just ain't interested. And it's tricky getting people to get on board with you, but getting people to not like you is a lot easier and a lot more fun. And you can just do more fun stuff in the matches as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just yesterday we were interviewing Jackson Hart, who we met thanks to you, and he was talking about how like you gave him the opportunity. Your booking of him was his first time as a heel, and he just loves it now. Like, I think he said like since Ignite, everywhere has made him a heel thanks to you, and he's on the best journey of his career. He's just loving it.
So. Yeah, I got so much time for Jackson. I met him quite early on in his career at UBW and saw something in him right away. So I was like, yeah, that's definitely a guy that I want to use. And it was just trying to work out a place for that. And that's what, that's kind of, I slotted him in on the breakout division last year. And I was hoping to bring him back and use him again this year. He's just got injured though on the last show that he did. I don't know how long he's going to be out for. So have to see. But Jackson's a great one, man. He's got so much potential. Yeah.
So talking UBW,
Yeah.
I know you got your championships and whatnot. So injury has taken over, sadly, and you can't sit back in the ring. And then we got this moment that turned up into the Hall of Fame. How did that feel? I mean, sadly, obviously, like a career cut short, so much potential. Like we will be listing some of the people that you faced later on and some of the people you brought up. But how did it feel actually being recognized for your work and being inducted into a Hall of Fame?
Yeah, man, that was a great honor, and it's like I was really not expecting that at all, and especially not a lot of places in this country do stuff like that, and that's just so UBW to do something like that. They're just such a family kind of orientated promotion. There's such a community feel there, and it's one of my favorite places to work. And even as running a promotion, it's somewhere I really look up to sort of like be like, that's kind of like what I aspire like Ignite to be in certain ways, because they've been around for 10 years. And all their shows are hugely successful, and they use so much great new talent coming through, and they've got an amazing training school. But I had so many good years there as CJ Carter, and some of my most favorite matches there and storylines. Probably my most favorite storyline ever was with Charles Crowley there. So we kind of ran that over sort of like 2 or 3 years. So there you go. I had my first ever. I had his first ever singles match, and we just kind of hit it off with chemistry in the ring. And I was like, I took him backstage afterwards, and I was like, dude, you're going to be huge. You are going to be a mega star. And he was like, I don't know. I don't see it. It's like, trust me, you've got more charisma than everyone in this room put together times 10, and you can't teach that. And I've just gone out there and had your first ever singles match, and you're better than a lot of people that I've been wrestling who've been going for 4 or 5 years already in your first match. Like, give it a few more years, and you're gonna have, incredible talent in the ring to go with that incredible kind of charisma that you already have. And yeah, we just hit it off. We had great chemistry. We had 4 or 5 matches in total over like 3 years at UBW. And it was like I came out in the coffin again against him. So I did 2 coffin kind of entrances at UBW. The second one was against him, and that last match we had at UBW he was the British heavyweight champion at the time, and I was trying to make it a 2-time, like trying to make CJ Carter a 2-time British heavyweight champion there. So and he had never beaten me, so I was kind of 4-0 at the time against him, and I wanted to make it 5-0 and take his championship. And like that match just still to this day, I have really fond memories of that match with him and that whole story we ran through UBW. And it kind of was so kind of successful there that lots of other promotions started booking that match as well. So we ended up wrestling across sort of like 5 or 6 different promotions, I think. So yeah, and so yeah, sorry, to get back to the Hall of Fame, UBW, and obviously Paul Ashe is part of running UBW, and he trained me originally going way back when. So when I came back as CJ Carter, I got in touch with Paul and was like, hey Paul, I haven't spoken to you for a few years, but obviously I still remember you training me, and that means a lot to me, and I'd love to come in and work for UBW. So that was kind of how I got in there. And so I love working with Paul. He's amazing. Justin, who also runs it, is a great guy. And I've had so many fun matches there and stories. So for them to want to bring me back after I've had to retire and give me that honor, or have me up in front of it was at their 10th anniversary show. So 10 years of UBW is a big show for them, in front of the crowd, and to say so many amazing things and nice things. It was a really sort of like heartfelt moment. And
would you class that as like a defining moment for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, like post retiring, probably the best moment I've had. So
yeah, I mean, I've been researching you, and I've seen you've won like championships across no less than 7 different promotions. Like, how did it feel each time that you got one of these belts? Because it's like, it's an acknowledgement that you are the guy, man. It's like a reward, I would say. It's almost like the stamp of approval that this is a guy you need to keep your eye on.
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to have championships. If I'm honest, the best thing about it is the cool pictures you get with them. I say this to everyone. Like, I got a really cool picture of me with 4 belts. So like I had 4 belts at one time, and I had got this really cool picture where I've got like 2 around my waist and I'm holding 2 out here, and it's just.
I wish I found that one. I've only got this one, sadly.
That one to do.
4 belts is awesome.
I was the Win Wrestling
You was
champion.
a belt collector yourself, I see.
Yeah, I almost had 5, but I was like, I thought I was going to line up perfectly, but I had to drop 1 before I won one. And I was like, 4 at once. That's still a nice picture. And it like you said, the recognition of being given that championship, which generally means you're going to be in the main events, which means they trust you to have main events that are of a high caliber every show. That doesn't mean a lot coming from the promoter of any place. But if I'm honest, I was never really about the championships like that. It was cool, and it was always nice to get some cool pictures, and it was always nice to get that recognition and to be trusted in the main events. But for me, what was more important was just having the best match on the card every night. That was way more important to me than winning championships, if I'm honest. Yeah, I just really wanted to go out there every single night and up the bar and say to whether I was first match, second match, main event, whatever, I was like top that. Like that was always what I prided myself on more than anything. So yeah, as nice as championships are.
Cool. While talking of like that awesome picture, there is someone whose picture I do have with multiple belts, and I know it's someone you took on. So I need to ask about that experience as a bit of a segue. This gentleman here,
Ultimo Dragon, yeah, man.
Ultimo Dragon. Yeah, I was going to say one of our guys, Nico, who you also met on Ignite, your promotion, obviously. He was just like Ultimo Dragon is one of his like Mount Rushmore of superstars. So unfortunately, he hasn't got a question here for you, but I just need to ask that question having you here. What was it like facing the legend that is Ultimo Dragon?
Yeah, that one came out of like left field. So that's when I was tagging with Gene Money as Lavelle. So it was actually part of a 6-man tag. So it was myself, Gene Money, another guy called Jonathan Windsor, who we were starting to get a little faction together. Like he was like the royal person, and we were the posh tag team, so we were together. And then we got told like you 3 are going to be facing the Bangra Knights at the time. I don't know if you've heard of him. It was RJ Singh, who's still on the scene now.
Yeah,
British
yeah.
And I've had him on Ignite a few times, and he'll definitely be back as well. And his tag team partner at the time, Daryl Allen, and they were like Progress tag team champions, and they were like a huge tag team on the scene at the time. So it's going to be like you 3 against the Bangra Knights. Oh, and their tag team partner is going to be the Ultimo Dragon, by the way. And I was like, what? Like, no way. Like me and Gene and Jonathan Windsor at the time, we were just like, what? Like, couldn't believe it. Invited all my friends to come. Obviously, I was like, I'm wrestling Ultimo Dragon. Like, obviously, I'm a good wrestling fan. So, I mean, it was just really nice to meet him in person, and he's just a super down to earth guy. All of the people are. You meet these people, and you think they're going to be like huge megastars because you watch them on TV, but they're just regular people like me and you, and just down to earth. And yeah, it was like it's a moment I always remember sharing a ring with Ultimo Dragon, and all my friends came to watch. Yeah, it was a nice. It was really nice.
Highly surreal.
It was a bit surreal at the time, I guess. But what's funny is I've had a lot of those kind of moments, I guess, that are a little bit surreal, where you either wrestling someone who's a huge name or someone you've looked up to, or you meet. I've done a lot of seminars with wrestlers who you think you're probably never going to meet, and you meet them, and it is kind of surreal. But then you kind of, once it's happened, you're like, oh, okay, they're just normal people, right? They're just normal people. They're a talent like you're a talent. At the time I was, I'm not anymore, but they're a wrestler like you're a wrestler. They just want to go out there and have good matches like you want to go out there and have good matches. They're no different to anyone else. So
is there anyone that had you like starstruck though?
No, not really. Not even really Ultimo Dragon, because it's like a little bit I was starstruck hearing about the match, but then when you meet them, you just end up conversing with them and chatting with them like they're just anyone else who's there on the day. So you quickly, just for that moment, they just become a person you're going to go out there and have a match with, and you need to plan what you're going to do. They don't become this huge megastar. Does that make sense? Like,
no, it makes total sense. I mean, all right, let me put it to you another way then. Who was your happiest to meet?
happiest to meet. I tell you what, who I was really happy to get in the ring with was Mark Haskins, and because he was an idol of mine. So like he was someone I really, he was someone that there you go. He was someone that I really kind of like modeled my wrestling style on, basically. Like I watched what he did in the ring, the way he moved, the stuff he did. He's a very similar size to me, and had a quite similar look, and I was always I did try to emulate him in some way. So when I finally got to have a match with him and get in the ring with him, that was, I was so happy with that, and that was such an honor, and it was one of my favorite matches for a long time. I tell you what, no one kicks harder than Haskins, by the way. That is official. No one I've ever been in the ring with.
You know what?
It's still one of our quick fire questions there.
Yeah, that's a question. Yeah, the quick fire question coming up later on, and that's probably the answer. But I went to Turning Point, just gone, and just before Ignite actually, and I saw him versus Leon Slater, and I'll be honest, I'm quite sad to admit because I've not watched a lot of Ring of Honor. I've lost contact with Ring of Honor for a while. Seeing him for the was one of the best matches, and that was a pre-show match. The two awesome talents, so I can imagine what it's like being in the ring with him like that.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was that was a learning experience, big time. And do you know what? I don't have many regrets. I try not to do regrets, right? Not this is a regret as such, but because it's not my fault, so I can't really regret it. But something that I wish could have been different. I was meant to have a second match with him when I was the United Wrestling Champion. Match was announced. It was going to be in August of last year. I was so hyped for it because I was 4 years on from my first match with him. I'd improved so much, and I was a champion now. This, I was the biggest name in this promotion, and he's coming in to wrestle me. And I was like, it felt like a kind of full circle thing, right? Like, and I really wanted to just up my game from the first time we wrestled, but obviously that was like booked for August last year, and I found out in July last year I had to stop wrestling, so I had to pull out of that match. And that is one thing that just kind of like that's hard to kind of like accept. Do you know what I mean? I really wanted that second match with him more than anything. Like I'm totally at peace with not wrestling anymore. I was totally at peace with having to retire. But if there was one thing that could have been different, I just wish I could have got through that last match with him. So, yeah.
Okay, CJ, look, that is such an amazing part of your career, which is capped off with the Hall of Fame induction into UBW. And guys, we're going to end it here, but it ain't over yet because there is the whole CJ, the promoter, on Ignite Wrestling. It's big. It's absolutely huge. Do you know what? Like, yeah, guys, tune in. Call it tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow for part 2 of the Ministry of Wrestling and CJ Carter. It's not to be missed.